In the world of chess, an Immortal Game is a game of brilliant sacrificial attack. The original Immortal Game was played in 1851 by Adolf Andersen. 174 years later, an amateur chess player, me, has played his own Immortal chess game. Let me show it to you. We will explore the now and then of chess brilliancy and discuss the evolution of chess itself. Let's dive in immediately. Let us begin with the original Immortal Game. I trust that many of you have already seen a recap of the original Immortal Game, so I will go through this game briefly and show you some unique lines that I discovered with the engine. Let's begin. White began with e4 and then e5, f4, the king's gambit, the most aggressive option at white's disposal. So here, after takes, the general approach is d4, grabbing the center. However, Adolf Andersen here went for bishop c4. Queen h4 is played, checking the king, very logical, and then king f1. Black went for an active approach, which is b5. The idea is it's opening up a square for the light squared bishop in the black position, targeting the e4 pawn. After takes, the bishop now is also a target of a6 or c6, gaining a tempo on the bishop. Next, black played knight f6. White played knight f3, queen h6, and now white went for d3. This move isn't all that accurate, because you really don't need to defend the pawn. If black takes, you can always just go queen e2, attacking the knight on e4. Let's say, for example, bishop b7. White just responds with knight c3, something like f5, and now just d5, threatening to win back the pawn and blocking in the bishop on b7. d3 proves as a slightly passive approach. White should have just played d4, going for something much more active. Black responded with knight h5, threatening knight g3 using the pin on the h file. So white naturally responds with knight h4, blocking the pin. A more active approach would have been rook g1. This move avoids knight g3 and is actually very strong, as white intends to go g4 in the future and attack the knight. After knight h5, white played the tactical incorrect move, knight h4. Black spots the best move, which is queen g5, targeting both the bishop on b5 and the knight on h4. White is forced to play knight f5. Here, the very logical move is g6. White's only move is h4, chasing the queen away, and after queen f6, white just plays on. Because if it takes, here's always queen h5. But if black doesn't take and go for something like bishop b7, black is doing pretty well and is slightly better. However, black went for the rather strange approach, c6. Here, white played a very aggressive and interesting g4. Of course, he can't take en passant because the queen is pinned. And here, black responds with knight f6. Look at this queen. It is feeling very cramped. The natural response here is rook g1, protecting g4 and preparing to attack the vulnerable queen on g5. Black made a mistake. C takes b5. We will dive into how this move is a mistake in a few moments, but first let's take a look at two alternative options. One is d5, another is h5. d5 is putting pressure on the e4 pawn. So if you're just wondering why can't I just take on d5, it is actually a mistake because of c takes b5, and after something like queen e2 or queen e1, you might think you're better because you're attacking the king, but actually the king is very safe on d8. Another interesting option is h5. The purpose of h5 is attacking the g4 pawn, and after takes, you will notice that, again, this piece is hanging, and meantime the threat of g6 is still existent. The knight doesn't really have a good square to retreat to, and it needs to go to d4 only to get pinned by the bishop on c5 to the rook on g1. For instance, bishop a4, and then after g6 and knight back, the logical bishop c5 basically cracks white's position. If you give up, and if you do more passive defense, like c3, there are more weaknesses in your position, such as d3, and let's say bishop f4, bishop d3, king e1, and knight e4. Look at these pieces just crashing into the white position, and white is basically hopeless. So now let's take a look at how c takes b5 is actually incorrect. First, h4, queen g7, h5, queen g5, and queen f3, threatening to trap the queen with bishop f4. So here a more active approach would have been bishop b7, the idea behind which is bishop f4 and knight g4, threatening knight h2. After takes, knight h2, king here takes on f3, and then king f3, at least the material balance is there. But powerful ideas like h6 are existent, and black really doesn't have a good move here to play. Let's say a very natural looking move like knight c6. Here just h6, undermining the pawn structure, g6, something like knight g7, bishop takes, here, bishop f6, the rook is wasted on g8, And if you just go on with normal development, there's something simple like knight c3 or d4 is both okay. White is simply much better. But black here played an even more passive move, which is knight g8. Look at the back rank. You really couldn't play chess with 6 out of the 7 pieces you have. Meantime, the only piece you developed was the queen, ready to be attacked by bishop f4. After queen f6, knight c3 makes a lot of sense, ready to attack the queen again on d5, threatening knight c7, and also taking on b5. Here, black went for bishop c5, attacking the rook on g1, knight d5, but actually this is quite a brilliant move, sacrificing the pawn on b2. More seriously, now the a1 rook is hanging. Here, white went creative and just played bishop d6, which allowed the position to go back to equal. How? After queen a1, king e2, and queen b2, the threat on c2 is always there, and the white king is simply too weak. Let me show you some lines. Bishop c5, queen c2, something like king f1, and then queen c5, queen f4, threatening knight c7, knight d6, queen e5, all sorts of threats. But the beautiful move, king d8, saves them all. Now let's say queen g5, it looks like you're winning the rook after f6 and queen g7, but that doesn't matter, because white has already sacrificed a rook on a1 and is down 8 points of material. So basically here the only option is knight up to e7, and let's say queen c1 check, king f2, queen d2 check, king g3, something like bishop d5, queen f8 check first, king c7, queen c8 check, king b6, knight d5, king a5, and now something like queen c7, king a6, a4, a beautiful move opening up the queen side, knight c6, covering the king further, a takes b5, king takes b5, queen d7, knight e7 to protect everything, and now rook b1, finally joining the party with the rook. King c5, very vulnerable king, and knight e7. Look at this king, threatened by all 3 of white's powerful pieces, and now black really doesn't have a choice but to go queen e3, king h4, queen f2, king h3, queen e3, etc., and go for a perpetual. Now, enough of that nonsense, and let's go back to the game. In the game, black played bishop g1, which is a mistake. Why? Well, not exactly because of e5, there's a faster way to win, which is rook e1, just threatening down this e-file at the vulnerable king. But e5 is still better for white, and after queen a1, king e2, the only chance for black to survive is bishop a6, providing an escape route for the king. However, black missed white's idea in this position, and played knight a6, stopping the threat on c7. But this actually falls into mate in 3. Can you find it? Okay, I hope you tried. Now let me show you. Knight g7, king d8, and now the fabulous queen f6, sacrificing the queen, the final piece of the puzzle, knight f6, and bishop e7, checkmate. Down 21 points of material, standing only with 3 minor pieces and a king, and several pawns scattered all over the board, white manages to checkmate black's king in such a beautiful fashion. This is definitely something that is worth being called an immortal game. Now, let me show you my own game, my own immortal game. So in this game, I'm playing from black, and I'm rated 2,254 at the moment, and my opponent is actually rated 2,340. This is a challenging pairing for me, which makes this game even more memorable for me. The game began with French defense, e4, e6, d4, d5, e5, advanced French, and then c5. Very classic, c3, knight c6, knight f3, and now there's generally 2 options, queen b6 or bishop d7. I would actually say that both lines kind of are similar, but bishop d7 is what's usually played at the top level, so I tried bishop d7. White played a3, a popular line. c4 is the most common strategy, binding down the queen side and possibly planning to go queen b6 and long castle and just stop the b3 pawn break and stopping any counterplay on the black king. After that, black can focus on attacking on the king side. So here white played bishop e2, and now I played queen b6. This is actually transposing back to the queen b6 line from move 5. In this position, a3, c4, bishop e2, knight f5, knight b d2, and then bishop d7. Again, you would see the exact same structure. And indeed, the knight on a5 immediately popped in after short castle by white, and I just played knight a5. Knight b d2, absolute same position. And now I went for knight e7. Knight g5 was played by my opponent, which is kind of an aggressive move that doesn't really do much. I just played a rather calm move, h6. White just retreated to h3. So during the game, I was thinking, did my opponent know some sort of an insane trap, like knight f7? But if you look at this, it's just useless. Of course, my opponent didn't go for a crazy sacrifice and just retreated. Then I played knight g6, bringing my knight out, And actually, I was thinking during the game, what if my opponent plays f4? And indeed, that happened. So the idea behind f4 is just breaking with f5 and then attacking on the f-file. But here I came up with something pretty interesting, which is retreating the knight back to e7. What's the idea? Notice that after f4, the square e3 is severely weakened, so my idea with retreating back is going to f5, threatening to go into e3, and if my opponent doesn't respond properly, he will be down in exchange, simply because of the fork. After knight e7, my opponent played knight f2, rerouting the knight on h3, and also preparing g4 to furthermore attack down the f-file. Knight f5, knight f3, of course, opening the bishop to protect e3. I just played knight b3, looking to exchange the bishop. Surprisingly, knight c1 was the worst move in my entire game, which kind of shows you how good this game was. But just saying, exchanging such a good knight on b3, blocking everything, for a useless bishop that hasn't even moved on c1 is kind of a bad decision. It's sort of this psychology when you're playing somebody higher rated. You just try to exchange more pieces and then to play a more simple position. But that is actually a common mistake that many of us make, even if we know that it might be incorrect. So after this moment of weakness, I immediately went back online and then played bishop a4. An interesting move, restricting the white squares on the white position. So generally what you should do now is just something like bishop d1, and then I'm forced to exchange, bishop d1, knight d1. My opponent must have not liked this passive position of retreating every piece back, because if you take with the queen, I just fork you. My opponent didn't go for bishop d1, and he allowed dominant control over this diagonal, and indeed, a quick teaser, this bishop actually won me the game, even though it didn't move for the rest of the entire game. So, let's tune in and keep on watching how this hero bishop actually managed to win me the game. Okay, white played g4, which is honestly quite a brave decision, attacking my knight and weakening his own king. I retreated again, notice that my knight is already 3 times on the e7, each time it's actually not that bad a move, kind of ironic. Now queen d2, activating some pieces, and I played h5 here, undermining g4 and trying to get back to f5 square. My opponent, of course, does not allow that, and now long castle. So I'm basically saying that the queen side is very close, and I think my king is safe. Now that you've pushed your pawns in front of your king is very vulnerable, and I'm going to try to attack the king side. King g2 was played, and white could have gone for knight g5, which would have been quite a challenging move. The move would have been bishop e8, quite a blitz move, and then preparing to send the knight back with f6. However, he did not play that and just played king g2, trying to get this rook over. If white would have gotten this rook over, and perhaps exchanged a pair of rooks and brought this second rook over, the king would be fine. So of course, I cannot allow that, and I just played f6, bc1, and king b8. After knight h1, a mysterious move, I thought it was time for me to attack, and I played knight g6. He followed up with knight g3, which again, I don't really think is an active plan. Here I just chopped down a few pawns, and I played bishop e7, again controlling the h5 square, because I want to infiltrate on the h-file. I need a square for me to stack my rooks and prepare for an attack. Knight h5, very logical, attacking the pawn on g7 and blocking my rook's path. I played rook d f8, ignoring the threat on g7. Honestly, I don't know if I can call this a sacrifice. I mean, a pawn sacrifice is a sacrifice, but really you couldn't take a pawn in front of your king when both of the rooks are ready to barrel down the king side, right? So I just played rook d f8, ignoring the threat on g7, and of course my opponent didn't take, and again he played something very passive. Playing knight g1, I was like, oh, he gave me the h4 square, why don't I just occupy it? I checked, king g3. Now my knight is kind of awkward there. It's not really doing much. My knight is kind of wasted there, and if I go back to g6, it's just a waste of move. Here, inspiration struck. Guess what? I played knight f5. An absolutely brilliant but simple idea. After takes and takes, the white defenses are stripped clean, and this king is just standing on the third row in the middle game, ready to be attacked. Knight f4, allowing g5 but protecting g6 from queen g6, attacking the king. My opponent was pretty greedy and took this hanging pawn. I mean, honestly, I didn't even see this, so I don't know if I can call this a sacrifice, but let's just count it. 2 points of material. Okay, after knight takes, I played check first, and after king f2, trying to run away to e1, checked again, and king e1. But I'm suspecting that my opponent really forgot about something, which is the bishop on a4 currently guarding the d1 square and blocking the escape path of the king. That's how this bishop became a hero. Here I played queen h6, another brilliant move, sacrificing the bishop on e7. And actually the best move here is already rook c2, because I've already sacrificed several pieces, and it is still playable. But here he wasn't capable of giving up the rook and played knight f3. Another lightning bolt struck me. g4. So he took the knight, and I played bishop h4. Wow, the king basically has nowhere to move to. So rook f2 is the only move. Bishop f2, king f2, queen h2, king e1, and I was thinking at that time, queen down here, bishop f1 and takes. So of course these two pawns are going to roll down the board, very powerful, but if you're focusing, you have known that I only have 50 seconds in comparison for my opponent's 2 minutes and 19 seconds. I realized something. I don't need to check on h1, but I can play queen h4, king f1, queen h1, king f2, g3, checkmate with the pawn. Now that you've seen both games, what do you think? According to chess.com analysis, my game was more on the accuracy side, while Andersen crafts beauty and art. We both sacrificed half of our forces, but his opponent went all in and took every piece. For me, surprisingly, I was only down 3 points of material at the end. These two games make us think of the evolution of chess. The Romantic era danced with daring sacrifices and brilliancies born of human fire. Morphy, Andersen, and Trigorin playing like poets. Then came the age of steel, Capablanca's clarity, Fischer's fury, Karpov's precision. Now, silicon minds guide us. Engines uncover truths deeper than instinct, lines sharper than any blade. Yet the soul of chess remains, creativity reborn in code, intuition sharpened by analysis. After all, Romanticism never died, it just evolved. Today, brilliance is more accuracy, more perfection, and more beauty. If you have games you've played that you're proud of, please submit them via email. I will select your games and pair them up with the giants of the Ode. Let us build a bridge between now and then together.